Shiro was an ordinary office worker in present-day Japan, trapped in a hollow existence where every single day followed the exact same pattern, all while he constantly longed for something greater. Each morning, he would wake up, board a bus to his workplace, and continue working until late at night, only to return to his grimy apartment where he spent the rest of his time mindlessly watching TikTok brain rot. He always wanted more from life, and eventually his desire was finally fulfilled. One night, he suddenly woke up and discovered that he was surrounded by a pure white void with absolutely nothing in sight. As his vision adjusted, he realized that he was sitting across from a white-haired K-pop idol who confidently claimed to be God himself. Shiro was not a 13-year-old fangirl, however, so instead of being impressed, he simply sat there with an unamused expression and asked where exactly he was. The so-called K-pop god then explained that Shiro had already died and was currently stuck in a state of limbo, where his soul was on the verge of vanishing forever. However, God was willing to give him a choice. He revealed that he could send Shiro to another fantasy world known as Matthias, where he would be able to live a new life as anyone he wished. This revelation immediately caught Shiro's attention, as it felt like the ultimate dream come true. Without wasting any time, the god pulled out a clipboard and began writing down the special abilities that would be integrated into Shiro's body. Before long, time ran out, and Shiro was sent off to the fantasy world of Matthias. When Shiro regained consciousness, he found himself standing in the middle of a forest and felt overwhelming joy at the idea of being given a second chance at life. He quickly stood up and began exploring his surroundings, eventually making his way out of the forest, where he noticed a small village in the distance. He immediately felt curious about what interesting things he might find there, but then realized that showing up without any money would only make people suspicious and likely prevent them from even offering him food. At that moment, he remembered that God had mentioned granting him enhanced scouting abilities, which would allow him to locate valuable items and ingredients that he could sell for a decent profit. Feeling confident, he raised a stick in his hand and shouted in an attempt to activate the magic, only to realize that absolutely nothing happened. Panic set in as he wondered whether God had completely scammed him. However, he soon realized that the problem was simply that he had been using the wrong command. Once he said the word search, the scouting ability activated instantly, revealing the locations of every collectible item throughout the forest. Shiro quickly understood just how useful this power was and decided to test another one of his abilities, which allowed him to gather detailed information about specific items. After trying different word combinations, he eventually discovered that the word scan successfully activated the skill, providing him with information about the various materials he could collect. Like someone at an all-you-can-eat buffet, Shiro grabbed every item he could find, checked their levels, and stored them in his side bag. This bag was also magical, allowing him to carry an unlimited amount of items without any ridiculous subscription fees. With all his gathered materials safely stored, he decided it was time to head toward the village. As the sun began to sink below the horizon, Shiro finally arrived at the village's main gate, which was being guarded by a single sentry who appeared to be asleep. Shiro greeted the guard, startling him awake, and quickly realized that the villagers were all quite short, making Shiro the tallest person there by far, which naturally drew a lot of attention to him. The guard asked whether Shiro was a knight or a swordsman, but was surprised to learn that Shiro was primarily a gatherer, a profession that was quite rare in this world. After opening the gate, the guard directed him to the main shop located at the center of the village, which specialized in dealing with such goods. Shiro entered the quiet village and walked along the wide road, noticing villagers staring at him from a distance, clearly curious about the unfamiliar newcomer. Ignoring the attention, Shiro made a beeline straight for the main shop and stepped inside the dimly lit store. The shopkeeper greeted him warmly and asked what he had come to sell. Shiro pulled out a smooth, oval-shaped stone, which the shopkeeper examined before immediately identifying it as antita droppings. He claimed he had never seen such a flawless specimen before and offered to purchase it for 5 silver coins. Shiro quickly realized that 5 silver coins were roughly equivalent to $350, which was more money than most people would ever hold at once. He accepted the deal without hesitation, much to the shopkeeper's delight, as the man rubbed his face excitedly. When asked if he had anything else to sell, Shiro laid out all the items he had gathered in the forest. The shopkeeper was left completely speechless by the sheer quantity and quality of the goods, and questioned why Shiro would sell such valuable items in a small village when he could earn far more in a major city. Shiro quickly lied, claiming that he was merely a traveler who collected materials while journeying across different regions. Despite the excuse, the shopkeeper recognized Shiro's talent and offered him a job to retrieve rare gems from the icy mountains nearby, warning that monsters might also be encountered. Shiru was unsure about taking on such a dangerous task so soon, but the promise of a 20,000 payout left him with no real choice but to accept. After bidding the shopkeeper farewell, he wandered through the village and eventually found an inn. He rented a comfortable room and collapsed onto the stiff bed, exhausted from the day's events and wishing he could wash away the dirt covering his body. A knock soon came at the door, and a young girl entered carrying a tub of water for him to clean himself. Having only ever used showers, Shiru had no idea what to do with it and asked her directly. The girl bluntly told him that he smelled awful and needed to clean himself using a damp towel. Shiru then asked whether the inn had a shower instead, which completely confused her. She explained that such luxuries were reserved only for nobles, while common folk had to make do with water and cloth. Shiru was shocked that something as basic as bathing was restricted, but the girl mentioned that some mages offered magical bathing services in exchange for money. This sparked an idea in Shiru's mind, and after paying the girl with a generous tip, he sent her out of the room. Once alone, Shiru began practicing his magic and eventually succeeded in casting a spell that allowed him to manipulate water, effectively giving himself the long-awaited bath he needed. Feeling refreshed, he collapsed onto the bed, still missing modern showers, but decided to sleep early to prepare for the next day. At dawn, Shiru woke up and headed back into the forest to gather various materials. While searching for mushrooms, he noticed a strange mark near some bushes and went to investigate, only to discover a decomposing corpse lying on the ground. Startled, he fell backward before calming himself and taking a closer look. He determined that the body belonged to a security corps member who had likely died while fighting monsters. Though he briefly considered leaving the area, he ultimately decided against it. He buried the body deep in the ground and placed the man's sword above the grave as a marker. With that done, Shiru prepared his evening meal. Since night was already approaching, he created a magical barrier around himself, lit a fire, and set a pot above it. Using wild vegetables and leftover meat, he cooked himself a stew, which turned out to be incredibly delicious, ending the day on a positive note. The following morning, he travelled to the haunted forest, a place filled with dead trees and thick fog that made visibility difficult even during the day. Activating his light magic, he ventured inside, fully aware that the area was known for its dangerous monsters. Surprisingly, he found no signs of life and began collecting valuable materials. Once finished, he headed toward the exit, spotting light ahead and sprinting toward it, unaware that he was rushing straight toward a deadly cliff. He fell into a cavern and would have certainly died if not for his quick reaction, as he activated flight magic mid-air and safely floated down. After landing gently, he breathed a sigh of relief, realizing how close he had come to death and resolving to act more cautiously in the future. Using his light magic again inside the cave, he discovered that the area was rich with various types of ore. He immediately took out a small hammer and began chiseling the ore from the rock walls, quickly filling his bag with a sizable amount. Spotting another deposit in the distance, he was suddenly interrupted by an earthquake, reminding him that time was limited. Acting quickly, he fired a fireball at the rock to extract the ore as fast as possible. To his excitement, the ore he obtained turns out to be the exact misreal ore the shopkeeper had been looking for. He immediately slips it into his pocket, yet chooses to continue deeper into the cave even after another earthquake shakes the area. After walking for a while, he notices a faint blue glow shining from the far end of the tunnel. Curious, he follows the light and discovers an opening that contains the bluest lake he has ever laid eyes on at its center. He carefully climbs down the rocky terrain and uses his scanning ability on the lake, only to discover that it is SS tier magical water. This instantly becomes the most impressive thing he has found so far, and he decides without hesitation that he needs to bring some of it back with him. However, he begins to question whether he even has a container large enough to store the water and worries about the possibility of it leaking. Before he can make a decision, a massive black dragon suddenly rises from the depths of the lake, spraying water everywhere and completely soaking Shiru. The dragon roars loudly, demanding to know who dared to wake him from his deep slumber. Shiru, however, has already seen enough and does not panic. Instead, he instinctively reverts to his old habits as a soulless salaryman who had spent his entire life bowing to everyone around him. He immediately bows deeply to the dragon, apologizing for intruding upon its lair. Rather than becoming angry, the dragon finds this reaction amusing, as it has never encountered a human with such nerves, and asks Shirou who he really is. Shirou responds that he is just an ordinary human, but the dragon refuses to believe him, sensing an enormous amount of magical energy flowing through Shirou, nearly rivaling the dragon's own power. The dragon then asks if Shirou would be willing to help him, explaining that only someone with such overwhelming magic could assist with the problem he is facing. He reveals that he has an egg that has failed to hatch despite a very long time passing, and asks Shirou whether he could do something about it. The dragon insists that he will not ask for help without offering compensation, and casually touches the lake's water, causing dozens of massive misreal oars to rise up from within it. Shirou immediately agrees to the deal. The dragon then pulls out a black egg and tosses it toward Shirou, who catches it carefully and listens closely, hoping to hear a heartbeat while wondering what exactly he is supposed to do. Suddenly, he recalls that eggs are meant to be kept warm, so he channels his heat magic into the shell. Almost instantly, the egg begins draining energy from Shirou's body, making him panic as he wonders if this was all a trap and whether he is about to die. He loses consciousness and finds himself submerged in warm water, where a different K-pop god with black hair appears and claims that Shirou's actions are disrupting the balance of the world. Shirou asks if this means he is dead, but the god replies that it is not time yet. With that, Shirou regains consciousness and awakens in complete darkness. He activates his light magic and discovers that the egg has successfully hatched, revealing a baby dragon. The large black dragon is filled with joy as the newborn dragon steadies itself on the ground. The dragon thanks Shirou sincerely and asks him to name the baby. Acting without much thought, Shirou decides to name her Bee. The dragon then shocks Shirou by announcing that from this moment onward, Bee will stay with Shirou. Shirou cannot believe that such a rare and beautiful creature could be entrusted to him, but the ancient dragon explains that Shirou is already incredibly strong and capable of protecting her. With that, the dragon sinks beneath the surface of the lake and disappears, leaving Shirou and Bee to continue their journey together. The two soon exit the cave, and by then, evening has already arrived. Bee happily flies around, experiencing the outside world for the first time, while Shirou realizes that night will fall soon. He decides to set up camp nearby and fills a glass with the magical lake water. The ancient dragon had used magic to link Shirou's magic bag directly to the lake, as the magical water is essential for Bee's growth. Bee quickly drinks the entire glass and immediately asks for another, which Shirou happily pours. However, she gently hands the second glass back to him, wanting him to drink the nourishing water and be happy as well. After that, Shirou uses magic stones to create a protective barrier, avoiding the trouble of chanting full spells aloud. He knows from a book he bought from Shakespeare that magic stones are extremely rare in this world, but that does not concern him since he can create them himself. He concentrates heat magic into his palm and forms a magic stone that produces a controlled flame suitable for cooking. With the fire ready, Shirou begins preparing a meat stew, and Bee starts drooling uncontrollably at the sight of it. Shirou assumes she should be able to digest some stew and pours her a bowl, warning her that it is very hot. Bee ignores the warning, gulps it down instantly, and burns her tongue, which Shirou finds surprisingly pathetic for a dragon. He then blows on the stew to cool it down before letting her continue eating until she is full and completely exhausted. Shirou finds her adorable and asks whether she misses her father at all. Bee immediately jumps over and hugs him tightly, clearly expressing that she is happy staying with him. Shirou checks her status and discovers that she is already ranked B and possesses several impressive abilities. He is shocked by this but reminds himself that no matter how strong she is, B is still just a child who needs guidance from an adult. He begins lecturing her, saying that even if she becomes stronger than him, she should avoid reckless behavior and listen to his advice. However, Bee grows too sleepy and starts snoring halfway through the lecture. Watching her sleep, Shiru thinks he gained a cute companion, though not in the way he originally asked the K-pop god for, and wonders if this was done intentionally. The following morning, Shiru climbs back up the cliff he fell from the previous day and returns to the forest. To his surprise, the forest looks completely different, and he assumes it must be one of the strange quirks of this world. While Bee explores the surrounding area, Shiru searches for useful materials and finds several new herbs. Suddenly, he feels an odd tingling sensation, and moments later, Bee comes flying back to him, clearly frightened by something. Shiru immediately scans the area for monsters, and multiple indicators appear on his radar. This surprises him, since he encountered no monsters the day before, making him wonder if his previously bad odor had been repelling them and was now washed away. He is not afraid of fighting, knowing he could obtain valuable materials by defeating the monsters. However, danger does not only come from the forest, as a C-rank rock falcon suddenly appears behind him. Bee is terrified of the vicious-looking creature, but Shiru finds it cute compared to the ancient dragon. After reading the monster's description and learning that its meat is delicious, he decides it is worth hunting. He creates a shield first, then fires ice spikes at the falcon, bringing it down instantly. Pleased with obtaining one ingredient, he is then alerted by Bee, who points toward additional monsters emerging from the forest. Turning around, Shiru sees wolves with snake-like tails and decides to engage them in close combat. He casts enchantment spells to make his body lighter and faster, allowing him to dodge the first wolf's attack by leaping high into the air. He then hardens his body with magic and delivers a powerful kick to the wolf's head, killing it instantly. The remaining wolves attack, but Shiru easily avoids them and defeats them with swift, powerful kicks. After collecting meat from all the fallen monsters, he notices even more creatures approaching from the forest and becomes irritated, realizing he cannot keep fighting endlessly. Bee decides to assist and attempts to fly while carrying Shiru, though he doubts she can manage it. Surprisingly, Bee uses her strength to lift him, prompting Shiru to help by reducing his own weight with magic. When he casts the spell, Bee is caught off guard and suddenly shoots high into the sky. Shiru panics and yells that she is flying too high, startling Bee into dropping him. Shiru screams as he falls, but the trees below cushion his fall and allow him to land safely. Bee quickly flies down after him and starts licking his face, which Shiru finds mildly annoying. As he stands up, he realizes they have exited the forest entirely, noting that Bee is faster than a fighter jet. He thanks her for the help and asks her to control her strength better next time, since he is far more fragile than she is. Bee fails to understand his complicated explanation and hugs him tightly instead, cracking a few of his ribs. After that, they continue their journey toward the village. Along the way, Shiru pulls out a branch he found in his backpack and tells Bee that it is from the legendary tree dress, said to embody the world itself, though it is currently dormant. Bee knows exactly how to awaken it and releases a cloud of foul-smelling gas that transforms the tiny branch into a staff. Shiru is stunned and wonders whether a gatherer like him can even use a staff, worrying that others might mistake him for an ordinary wizard. His thoughts are suddenly interrupted by a loud roar, causing him to immediately prepare for battle. Bee flies toward the sound, making Shiru worry as he follows her. He finds Bee circling a tree and soon encounters a ragged, exhausted elf beneath it. Shiru asks the elf if she was attacked by a monster, but she denies it just as her stomach lets out the loud roar that frightened him earlier. The elf explains that she has not eaten for 3 days, and Shiru is shocked to realize the terrifying sound came from her stomach. She asks for water, and he quickly hands her his bottle, which she drains in one gulp. While the water helps her feel better, it does nothing to satisfy her hunger, prompting Shiro to search for the lunchbox he brought along. He offers it to the elf, who devours the food eagerly before shouting with joy that it is so delicious she feels like she is ascending to heaven. Shiro is taken aback, never imagining elves could behave so uncivilized, but tells her the food only tastes that good because she has been starving for days. He then questions how she could run out of food so quickly when a village is located nearby. The elf becomes uncomfortable and Shiro begins mocking her, saying that even clueless beginners carry lunchboxes when traveling. This angers the elf, who steps closer to argue, but Shiro immediately backs away due to her smell. This OCD-ridden racist remarks that he always believed elves would smell like peppermint and strawberries, but instead she smells like freshly laid manure. The elf becomes irritated with him and explains that she could not clean herself properly because she had been forced to camp outside for many days. After saying that, she quickly prepares to leave, thanking Shiro for the food, but also telling him that it is rude and weird to mock someone you have just met. With that remark, she runs off, leaving Shiro feeling disappointed after his very first encounter with an elf. Putting that aside, he returns to gathering materials and eventually exits the forest. Bee then notices a carriage approaching them from more than a mile away, which greatly impresses Shiro. Before long, the carriage comes close enough for him to clearly see it, and Shiro is stunned to discover that it is being pulled by a unicorn. The merchant driving the carriage is equally surprised to see Shiro and asks what he is doing out here. Shiro explains that he is traveling on foot toward Tamed village, prompting the merchant's family to peek out from inside the carriage to see who is outside. The man notices Shiro's staff and asks whether he is a wizard or something similar, to which Shiro nervously replies that he is merely a gatherer. This answer surprises the merchant even more, since expert gatherers are quite rare in this world. The man then invites Shiro to ride with them, as they are also heading toward Tamed village. Shiro hesitates and asks whether it would be all right for someone as tall and heavy as him to ride in the carriage, but the merchant assures him that it is no problem at all. Shiro accepts the offer and climbs inside, quickly learning that the children find him amusing due to his extraordinary height. As he thanks the family for the ride, they tell him that it is no trouble at all, explaining that people in this region always help one another. They are extremely friendly, and Shiro feels that they may be a bit too trusting for their own good. Curious, he asks what they would do if he were actually a bandit, and tries to scare the children as a joke. However, the boy confidently responds that Shiro cannot be a bandit because the bell did not ring. Confused, Shiro asks what he means, and the woman shows him a bell embedded with a magic crystal that rings whenever a dangerous person is nearby. Shiro is impressed by the idea and thinks that he could probably create a similar magic crystal himself. He then suddenly realizes that he never introduced himself, so he tells the family about who he is, and they introduce themselves in return. The man driving the carriage is named Palem, his wife is Eliza, and their children are Yunnan and Kane. As they continue talking, Bee suddenly starts making noises, and the children notice that the sound is coming from Shiro's back. They excitedly ask what he is hiding under his coat, causing Shiro to grow nervous, as he explains that it is a rare monster and that they might be shocked if they see it. Eliza calmly reassures him, saying that it is not unusual since adventurers often travel with monsters. Hearing this gives Shiro the confidence to let Bee come out, but only after warning her not to bite anyone. The children are immediately captivated by Bee's cuteness, while the parents are shocked, as dragons are extremely rare creatures. Palem asks Shiro whether he is a dragon knight, since he has a dragon companion, and Shiro explains that he happened to find a dragon egg and managed to hatch it. This explanation shocks Palem and Eliza even more, as they explain that dragon knights are incredibly rare, and dragons themselves are even rarer. Shiru becomes curious about dragon knights and imagines them as extremely powerful figures based on the anime he watched in his past life. As night falls, the family decides to set up camp. Shiru creates light using magic and places magic stones around the campsite to form a protective barrier. He explains that the stones will keep monsters away and that if anything happens, B will warn them. Despite this, the family places their trust more in B than in Shiru or the magic stones, which leaves him slightly disappointed. Eliza then prepares to cook dinner, but Shiru asks her to let him handle it instead. He pulls cooking tools and ingredients out of his magic bag, surprising the family yet again. Using the ingredients he gathered that day, he prepares a meal that amazes everyone with its flavor. Palom even starts crying, saying that he had grown sick of eating dried meat every day during the journey. He declares that Shiru must be a magician, calling him a magician of taste. Everyone laughs at this, then sings and dances together before going to sleep. This is a completely new experience for Shiru, who used to eat dinner alone back on Earth, and he realizes how wonderful it feels to share meals with others. When dawn arrives, Palom is already awake, cleaning the reins and the carriage, while the children remain half asleep with B nestled between them. Shiru is awake as well and sits on the ground, passing time by polishing his scissors until they shine. Eliza emerges from the carriage after finishing her own preparations and greets Shiru, remarking that anyone who takes good care of their tools makes a fine adventurer. Shiru reflects on how much he has been enjoying his life lately and realizes that even though he became a gatherer by pure chance, he might actually be naturally suited for it. Soon, they prepare to resume their journey. This time, Shiru asks whether he can hold the reins for a while, and Palom happily agrees. Shiru sits at the front beside Palom, and they continue forward without any trouble. The unicorn proves to be incredibly intelligent, responding obediently to Shiru's commands. B soon wakes up properly and flies over to Shiru, settling comfortably near his legs. After a smooth journey lasting a few more hours, they finally catch sight of Tori village and soon arrive at its front gate. Shiru gets off there, while Palom and his family thank him for the wonderful time they shared before continuing on their way.
The guard at the gate seems familiar with Palom and comments that Palom always brings spring with him. This piques Shiru's interest, and he asks the guard what Palom does for a living. The guard explains that Palom and his family travel toward warmer regions because Palom is a weaver by trade. Whenever Palom arrives at the village, it signals that spring and summer are close behind. The guard also mentions that there has been less game to hunt recently, which helps Shiru understand why Palom had been so delighted by the food. Shiru silently thanks God for giving him the ability to be a skilled gatherer, as he never has to worry about finding food or money. Shortly afterward, he goes to meet the shopkeeper who gave him the quest and shows him everything he collected. The shopkeeper carefully examines each item one by one, but his attention lingers on a particular stone. He turns to Shiru and asks where he found it, explaining that this is not just mythal ore, but a magical mythal ore. Shiru admits that he had no idea, but the shopkeeper declares that this stone is the stuff of legends. This finally shakes Shiru, who asks whether it is valuable. The shopkeeper explains that the stone contains an enormous amount of concentrated mana, and that just 2 or 3 of them could replace every magic stone in the entire kingdom. Shiru is stunned, but hides his special ability, claiming that he found it by chance. The shopkeeper does not believe him, saying that even if it was found randomly, Shiru must possess great skill along with incredible luck. He tells Shiru that his talents are wasted here, and advises him to travel to the next major city, Belchim, where people have the wealth to buy such items and where he can learn more about the world. He also suggests that Shiru join a guild, which would provide him with advanced knowledge useful for future adventures. Later that night, Shiru relaxes in his room and researches guilds and adventurers. He realizes that becoming an adventurer could be very beneficial, but he is not in a rush. He decides that joining a guild will be his next step, but for now, he plans to stay in Tormi for a while longer. Several days pass. during which he offers the beasts he hunted earlier to be cooked for the entire village. Due to the shortage of game, everyone enjoys the meat immensely, including even the village troublemakers, making the effort a success. He spends a few more days wandering around the village and gathering materials before preparing to leave. A kind, elderly woman gives him a bundle of seasonings and spices for his journey,